But Mark, let's end the podcast kind of looking at the biggest news of the day, but we had free agency that we had to get to. We had to talk about the AAF kind of in the middle to break it up. But Kareem Hunt signed by a team, and that team is the Cleveland Browns. Kareem Hunt, running back, Cleveland Browns. Kind of let that soak in a little bit. And the question I'm going to ask you, actually before I ask you, I'm going to throw this out to you guys. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. Most Valuable Podcast is at Most Valuable Pod. I'm at Ricky Widmer. Mark is at The, with 2 E's, Mark Weber. Let me throw this out to you, Mark, this question. Now that Kareem Hunt is on the Browns, does this make Cleveland more of a contender in, let's just say, the AFC North? Does it make them a contender in their division?
I mean, I would say, of course it does, because they already were not really far from being a contender.
True.
I mean, you know, they were 7-8-1. Pittsburgh was 9-6-1. That's the tie right there. And then Baltimore was 10-6. So, and the thing for Baltimore you got to remember is they had a quarterback change mid-year. And that change was to a more of a mobile quarterback. Which mobile quarterbacks do really well at first till defenses catch up. So it's going to be a very different looking Baltimore team. Pittsburgh's going to be very different looking because they're going to lose Le'Veon Bell. They might, although I don't really think so, but they might also lose Antonio Brown. And Cleveland also changed their coach in the middle of the year. So you give them a chance to win some of those games that maybe they didn't lose or they didn't win. Maybe instead of tying with the Steelers in week 1, maybe they could have done something else. Anyways, yes. The answer is yes. I mean, Kareem Hunt is a very good, talented player. The question of should he be re-signed in the league? Does the league actually care about domestic violence at all when they're willing to allow someone to re-sign someone currently suspended for the video of him, you know, committing domestic violence? These are very real questions that are very valid questions that a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on. With that being said, I think it's interesting that the NFL is okay with Kareem Hunt being signed to any teams. But anyways, just talent-wise, you know, missing, let's say he misses 4 games, still, those remaining 12 games that he's there, he makes the Browns better. He adds something. They already have a lot of good weapons. They've already got Nick Chubb as one of their running backs, who I think is a great running back. Almost a 1,000-yard rusher last year. This will be a great addition for the team, just talent-wise.
And the thing that I think about is, first off, what you said of there is probably going to be some type of suspension or some type of discipline to be handed down from the league. And the first thing people want to say is, how can Kareem Hunt be signed and Ray Rice was not? Folks, this is a prime example of if you're still worthy in the NFL, like basically you're still young enough, you're going to get a team. Like Ray Rice was getting old. Like
I couldn't disagree with what you're saying anymore. Well, but I'll let you finish.
The thing I'm going with, and I'm not agreeing with it, is Kareem Hunt still has value as a player more so than what Ray Rice did. So, of course, a team like Cleveland is going to sign him. Now, do I agree with the sign? Like, do I agree with what he did? And basically, on that side of it, no. And there's part of me that goes, I don't even know how you justify this, but if I'm the league, if you really want to send a message, and it would kind of screw over the Browns by doing this, if the league just said, oh, you signed him to a 1-year deal, well, guess what? He's suspended for 16 games. Have fun.
Well, it wouldn't matter. They wouldn't have to pay him because he wouldn't be playing.
True, but they wouldn't get him.
I don't think this has anything which puts them in the exact same situation, so they're not getting screwed at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this has nothing to do with value. Ray Rice still had value to the organization he was a part of. Adrian Peterson still had value to the organization he was a part of. And Adrian Peterson's back, so he proved that he still has value. And, we don't need to have a conversation about Colin Kaepernick because that goes in many different directions, especially for those listening to the podcast who have very strong opinions on him.
The bottom line is Colin Kaepernick has value too.
Exactly. He does have value to certain teams that would take him. What it does tell you is this is desensitization. We've seen Ray Rice drag a woman across the floor. We saw pictures of Adrian Peterson and what he did to his son. Mm-hmm. We now have a video of what Kareem Hunt did to a woman. But you know what? It didn't look as bad as dragging a woman across the floor by her hair. It didn't look as bad as what you did to a child. And unfortunately, that is the way that people are viewing it. Well, and that's the way that people look at it. They say, I've already seen it, so I'm okay with it. And it's essentially a different form of gaslighting in the way that you're just lowering the collective NFL's defenses. Remember the huge outpour of people who hated Michael Vick for what he did to animals, to dogs. And you know what? We kind of forgot about it. Ray Rice, you kind of forget about it. You just kind of forget, and that bar gets lower and lower each time because you've already seen something bad. So now you're not that upset about it.
Well, and there's a part of
which is not right for anybody that's out there saying I'm condoning it. No, I'm saying that as an issue.
Yeah, and what you're saying is basically Ray Rice was the first. It's always the first one is kind of like the. I don't want to use the word martyr, but kind of like they're made the example of like, we need to punish them. You're the first. We're going to come down on you hard, hopefully so it never happens again. And then everything else after that is kind of we get desensitized to it towards never as hard as that first punishment that gets laid out. I do kind of agree with you in some sense, but I do believe that it goes down to what can you bring to the franchise. And the running back is a weird position. Like, it's an interesting position where once you hit 30, people start going, okay, there's a cliff you're going to hit. Ray Rice, it was really the Ravens had a decision of, yes, you're good, but is your talent worth the public hit that we would take? No. The Vikings, Adrian Peterson, you are good, but is your ability worth the hit that we would take? Like, look at Adrian Peterson. You bring him up. Who did he get signed with? The team that doesn't give a crap. Like the Redskins. They are a team that basically for an entire year, we were like, hey, dude, your logo's racist. And Dan Snyder went, nah, whatever. So, there's that to it. And you can even say that in this situation. Who is signing Kareem Hunt? GM John Dorsey. And he's a guy who, one, he was with the Chiefs when Kareem Hunt was drafted by them and picked up. So, A, he has that connection of like, ooh, I kind of scouted him, or not scouted, but his scouts did. I was the one that kind of drafted him, so I kind of feel like that connection. I know he's a good player because I liked him when I was with Kansas City. But then also you look at Dorsey, he is also a guy where look at the moves he has made. Josh Gordon, when many people were like, why is Josh Gordon still in the league? He has a problem. He needs help. Dorsey was like, hey, we're going to be there for Josh. Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield was a guy where you either loved him or you hated him, and I think that's, like you have mentioned on the podcast, Mark, that's becoming even more so, where you either love Baker Mayfield or you hate him. He had a ton of questions. The planting the flag, the flipping the other players off on a game, the running from the cops when he was drunk. Dorsey still went ahead and drafted him because he was like, hey, this guy's our quarterback. This guy can help our team. This is just another example of Dorsey saying, hey, I know what Kareem did was wrong. I know it's rough, but I have taken risks on guys before, and I am going to take another risk on a guy that I know because, like Kareem Hunt, like you said, even if he's suspended for 4 games, it's kind of like what Tom Brady was to the Patriots. Tom Brady missed 4 games. The Patriots were fine. The Browns will miss Kareem Hunt for 4. I'm going to use the 4-game kind of sample. They miss him for that. Ooh, they're the same Browns team as they were last year. And then they add Kareem Hunt. They add that weapon. And the thing I like about the football move to kind of get more to that side of it is Brandon on Twitter. First thing I saw from him, I get it. He's upset. He's got Nick Chubb on his fantasy team. Boo-hoo. Brandon, you took a hit. I had Mark Ingram on my fantasy team, so we all got to deal with it. But basically, this is like an Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram situation where you're now Kareem Hunt, who is kind of the speedy back, Alvin Kamara style, who can be your receiver in the backfield. And then you have your Nick Chubb, who is more of your power back, a la Mark Ingram, like the Saints. This is exactly, in my mind, the first thing I thought of that the Browns are going to go to now that they have Hunt and Chubb in that backfield. The only question, and I'll ask you this, is can Freddie Kitchens put it all together? I know that it was solid when he was the offensive coordinator after Hugh got fired, but once you're the head coach, you got to focus on more things that you didn't when Greg Williams was there. Is Freddie Kitchens going to be the guy to do the head coaching duties, but also run the offense like he was last year?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot that goes into that. And he might. I mean, it's hard to say until we see it, is really what it comes down to. There's a lot of expectations for the Cleveland Browns, and, it's a team that historically hasn't always done the best when there were these expectations there. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens when people have a whole year tape on Baker Mayfield. We see quarterbacks go through a sophomore slump all the time, or really come on early in their career, and then the rest of it's just average. So there's a lot of that potential out there. But yeah, I mean, Kareem Hunt can certainly be very useful. I mean, there's the also other added benefit of running back is one of the positions more so than anybody else where your carries matter. The amount of touches you have, the amount of hits you take, that really matters. So it actually can be seen as kind of a benefit to miss out on 4 games. Because then your season is not 16 games. Your season's only 12. That actually can help you. That can keep you healthier. By the time you've played a full season, congrats, you're in the Super Bowl. It just gives you the ability to stay fresher for longer. And then to, of course, end up helping out Nick Chubb when you can take some of those carries away from him and then, reduce his workload. So it can certainly be useful. It certainly can be helpful. We definitely got to see what happens with this Cleveland Browns team once teams have had more time to prepare for them, more time to learn from them, and to really see what's going to happen with them. I mean, there's a whole, like I said, almost 3/4 of tape out there for you to watch from the Cleveland Browns season last year. So it'll be really interesting, that's for sure, because I think it was Baker that said it, not Lamar Jackson that said it, but he said that this division's going to be him and Lamar from now on.
Sounds like a Baker thing to say.
Yeah, that totally could be true. It's totally possible. We got to kind of wait and see on these two guys because they're both very talented quarterbacks. And these teams are both, I mean, not the Falcons. The Ravens are already kind of there. I mean, they're the division winners. But the Browns are this up-and-coming team, and the other two teams have fallen off a bit, or in the Steelers' case, are kind of in the process of falling off. So it's totally possible that they could be these next two teams. It's just they got to hold it together. and the new head coach has a very important job of keeping everything together, because that's the other part with a guy like Kareem Hunt. You might have some people in that locker room who are going to have strong opinions about him when he walks in there day one.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to mitigate that too. You got to get everybody on the same side. You got to get everybody, even if they don't like each other, they got to play together.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some value to that, to actually being able to manage that.
Well, I mean, and that's interesting because I think about that, and I think about, like, when I was watching one of the Pat McAfee shows, he had mentioned his later time in Indy when he was an older, like, veteran. He would say that his role was kind of like almost like a glue guy, like to make sure that everyone was like, that the locker room was chill and that it was like a good atmosphere to be in. And you look at the Browns, they're a young team. We even saw from Hard Knocks, they're a young team, but also, like, you look at your veterans, and Tyrod's not going to be there. He's going to be somewhere else, where he was probably, in my mind, on Hard Knocks, the best veteran for that whole Browns team. But now what? Your best veteran on offense, or your highest veteran on offense, is Jarvis Landry, who, let's be honest, Jarvis with his outbreaks or his passionate speeches on what we saw on Hard Knocks could tiptoe the line a little bit. Like, yes, it's passionate, but it's not as, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, not coddled.
It wasn't actually motivating.
It wasn't
Most people
actually.
were just kind of like, can you sit down and shut up? I don't even understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Whereas,
and it's also the part too of, at that point at least, I don't think anybody viewed him as a team leader.
Mm-hmm, but
he was
now,
kind of this outside person.
But now after being on the Browns for a full year, I would say that he's one of their senior veterans. Would he not be?
By default, yeah, he has.
Because, I mean, Baker's a Brown just as long as he's been, but Baker's entering his sophomore year. And the thing that's interesting about the division is, we've talked about it, the Bengals will probably be at the bottom. I'm sorry, Bengals, but, like, I'm reading articles that the Bengals might move on from Andy Dalton. So, I mean, that's the kind of issue you're dealing with, moving out of the Marvin Lewis era. The Steelers have all their dysfunction. Bell's not going to be there. Brown wants out. How's that team going to look without either of them? And then you've got the Ravens, who are a 10-win team, Lamar Jackson, but let's see what happens when more teams get film on them. Like I mentioned to Brandon on the Primetime Podcast, you look at the Chargers, and besides them blowing that lead, they had figured out Lamar Jackson. They had figured out that Ravens pass offense, that offense in general, to where they couldn't do anything in the first half, and why the Chargers got a big lead, and then the Chargers just kind of took their foot off the gas and blew it. I want to ask you, kind of moving more so from the division, it's Baker said that it's going to be the Ravens and the Browns going forward. Does Kareem Hunt make the Browns a playoff contender, and a serious playoff contender? Like, I'm saying, win some playoff games and could make some noise in the AFC playoffs.
Well, I mean, they were only really 2 games behind getting into the playoffs this year. So the question becomes, does Kareem Hunt give them the chance to win 2 games?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, yeah. I mean, Kareem Hunt, will get them enough weapons, enough firepower to probably have won some of these close games, because he is that game changer. He is that guy who will have that explosive play, who'll make things happen, especially when you're a team that's not going to forget that he exists. So I think he definitely can, as long as the coaching is there. Because, I mean, players are great, but the coaching's got to be there too. And as long as the coaching is there, and they're calling the right plays, and they're making the adjustments when they need to, they're doing everything they need to do, then yes, then he can definitely do it. And can they become a team that, is competing in the playoffs? That one I think is still up in the air, because, I mean, we mentioned this I think last week too. Tom Brady's still there. Patrick Mahomes is out there. Jacksonville is going to be back next year with a better quarterback probably. And Jacksonville with a better quarterback is a better team than pretty much every other team.
Mm-hmm.
The Colts, with some more weapons, they are a Super Bowl contender, if they're not already basically a Super Bowl contender. So there's a lot of other teams out there, and that's not even without mentioning, of course, the Falcons. I keep saying the Falcons. The Ravens, who are in your division. And then you got the Chargers, too. So there's a lot of teams out there that were already there and are already kind of in a better spot than you are. So can they win some games? Sure, they can in the playoffs, but it becomes a little tougher because they're not a whole step ahead of any of these other playoff teams yet. And I don't think that Kareem Hunt really puts them a step ahead of anybody. I think it puts them at the same spot or pulling ahead of a team like the Colts or pulling ahead of a team like the Ravens, but not necessarily actually fully ahead yet.
Based off of last year, I can tell you what the Browns' record this year is going to be. And the reason why I'm going to do this and I'm going to go through it is you look at last year, all of their wins, Jets, Ravens, Falcons, Bengals, Panthers, Broncos, Bengals, all but one, not a playoff team. You look at their losses, New Orleans, Oakland, which, let's be honest, Oakland should have been a win. They kind of got screwed in overtime. The Chargers, Tampa Bay, overtime game. Tampa Bay played a really good one. Could have been flipped to a win. There's reasons why I'm saying that too. Steelers, Chiefs, Texans, Ravens. All but the two, I mean the Steelers too, but all but like the Steelers, Bucks, and Raiders, non-playoff teams. All the others were playoff teams and they lost to them. Looking at their 2019 opponents, if I kind of use the same model for last year, sweep the Bengals, split against the Ravens, I'll give you a split against the Steelers because of that tie. Now you get Kareem Hunt. Okay, that can flip to a win. So right now you're looking at 2, 3, 4 wins just from the division. Then you play the AFC East. You get 3 wins there. So now you're at 7. Patriots are your only loss. So you're 7-3 right now. Then you look at the NFC division they're playing, the NFC West. Loss against the Rams, loss against the Seahawks. 49ers will be interesting. With Jimmy Garoppolo coming back, that could be an interesting one. Win against the Cardinals. So I'll give you 1 win for sure. I might add a win against the 49ers. Let me think about it. So you're at 8 right now. Then your 2 additional games that you have to play are the Broncos, which chalk that up as a win because they were not a playoff team last year. You're at 9 now. And then Tennessee, which I will give you a win because they weren't a playoff team, but they were a team that really, they played for the playoffs the last week of the regular season and lost that game. You're at 10. You're at 10 right there based off of that. So this could be a Browns team that makes the playoffs at 10-6. At worst, if let's say like I flip that Texan game to a loss, this is a team that expect them to be 9-7, 10-6 with Kareem Hunt. And that's just going off of last year. Kareem Hunt being added, do they start beating playoff teams now? That is the most important thing that the Browns have to do this year. They have to beat playoff teams. They have to maybe beat a Seahawk team. They maybe have to steal one against a 49er team, against a Titan team. They need to beat these teams that were playoff teams last year. They need to maybe steal a game against the Rams because I also didn't go through home and away. The Rams will be in Cleveland, so that'll be interesting. The Seahawks, they're playing that one in Cleveland, not Seattle. How's that going to play into it? I mean, New England, they're going to lose that one, but they're playing that one in New England. You got to step up. You want to be a playoff team, basically, is what I'm saying. You got to beat those playoff teams. That's the bottom line of it. Do you have any final thoughts, Mark, about Kareem Hunt signing or about the Browns in general?
Not necessarily. I mean, this was a 7-8-1 team.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are saying they probably should have beat the Steelers in that tie game, unless you're a Steelers fan, which would have made them an 8-8 team. It's not unbelievable that 2 years ago, one of the top 3 running backs in the NFL would make this team win 1 or 2 more games.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't surprise anybody.
Well, let's be honest. Like I said, the Raiders and Bucks could have easily been wins as well. So if they did that with the Steelers, they're a 10-win team.
Yeah, so, it shouldn't surprise anybody that they will. Things change any given Sunday, all that good stuff. And the thing that we're ignoring in this is that we still have free agency, of course, because we haven't gotten there. We still have the draft. So other these teams that are bad, are obviously going to be better and all that type of stuff. But, yeah, I mean, it shouldn't surprise anybody that the Cleveland Browns suddenly can look like a playoff team with the addition of a very talented player.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. We unpacked a lot in this one. First off, you've got it's going to come up, the Kareem Hunt signing. What do you think of it in the first place? Then what do you think about it from a football standpoint? How much does it help the Browns? Is it going to, like what Mark and I said, if he's suspended 4 games, how is that going to affect the Browns, if anything? Because also, in that case, it just depends on which opponents you're seeing in those 4 games. If they see non-playoff opponents in those games that they can win, then that suspension probably won't hurt them, but let us know what you guys think. Also, make sure to hit us up on patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. We're going to have Shane on. Pat also wants to come on. We'll probably have both of them on later this month after the mock draft. I know Pat wants to talk about Da Bears, so Mark will really enjoy that one. I know Shane wants to come back on and talk about his Colts. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter at MostValuablePod, at Ricky Widmer, at the Mark Weber with 2 E's, and rate and review the Onside Kick on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. Want to thank you guys for watching me this week on YouTube as I kind of put the hand out of the frame. And thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. But as always, have a good day, everybody.